Everybody, welcome to Nerdbot Talks. My name is Dade Elza, and I'm here with Dylan Sprouse. Dylan, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing swell, man. Thank you for having me. It's a beautiful sunny day today, and I'm trying to be in the shade as much as possible.
Yeah. Now, are you out in Los Angeles or New York right now?
I am out in Los Angeles, actually. So I'm a little while ago, I flew back out to take care of some family stuff, and now I'm out here again. So I'm enjoying the sunshine finally. Before then, I was completely quarantined up in New York, which, as you might have heard, is the epicenter.
Oh yeah, it's insane up there, man. So I'm glad that you're enjoying the sunshine and having a good time down here.
Thank you very much. I'm still a cave dweller, so I don't often try to go outside, but I figure it's good to at least get 3 minutes, 2 minutes a day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just a little bit of sunlight so you don't go completely pale, right?
That's exactly right.
Turn into a cave troll or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't want to look like a slug. That's normally how I look through the year, so I'm trying to avoid the slug look.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder how long in one cave that would take to get the slug look.
Well, I mean, if it were my assessment, I'd probably say 2 weeks for me. It's 2 weeks. I have a terrible metabolism, so.
Oh, okay. So the slug just builds up quickly with the.
Yeah, slime starts oozing out around week 1.5.
That's a terrible thing that you've got to deal with, man. I apologize for that. Hopefully we can find a cure.
Yeah, I think it's hereditary.
Well, man, thanks for coming on. We wanted to talk a little bit about Sun Eater today. That's
yeah.
I've looked into it a little bit. It looks really awesome. I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is, with everything that you've done throughout the years in the industry, has comic books always been a goal of yours to get to?
It's funny. I don't think it's been explicitly a goal of mine. While even still, it was a huge inspiration on me. I'm sorry, you're going to hate me for this, but there's a bee drowning in the pool right now, and I think I got to save him.
No, you go for it. Get it.
Okay. Hold on. Come here, little guy. Come here. Okay. There we go. So I grew up with comic books, and they're hugely influential in my life. So I started working. There's literally, he flew right back into the pool. You're going to kill me for this. He flew right back into the pool. Come on, man. Get it together.
It's determined, man.
Comic books have been hugely influential to me, being that I worked at Meltdown Comics as my first job and outside of the industry. And I was bagging and boarding and just cleaning the place generally. So when I think in terms of writing, it's oftentimes in kind of comic book or visual format. And so I've been writing Sun Eater for 5, almost 6 years now.
Oh, wow.
And it was just kind of a natural fit. I decided that, amidst all of this, in order to keep the boundaries as limitless as possible for the narrative to be coherent, I decided on comic book format. And that ended up with heavy metal, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. That's very.
I saved the bee, by the way. We're good.
Dude, that's awesome. Humanitarian as well.
What can I say? I love bees.
Yeah? All right. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you got it out because it seemed pretty keen to stay into that pool.
Yeah, I'm kind of winded now. I don't know why, but that's testament to staying inside too much.
It's your
anyway
exercise for the day.
Yeah, that's all I need. Anyway, yes. So Sun Eater in general, it hasn't been an explicit goal of mine to write in that way. But as I was continuing to write Sun Eater, I felt like it was the format that fit most. And, I think internally, maybe even subconsciously, it was definitely the format that I felt was most comfortable to me. I think that in terms of low fantasy stuff, you're limited if you're trying to make a TV series and what you can do by budget constraints and concerns and things like that. And so I knew that in order to tell the story properly, I couldn't be thinking about that kind of stuff. And so went to comic books. And I think it's the perfect medium for it.
That's awesome. Absolutely. And you can still get that visual element that goes along with the storytelling in the form of comic books. That's really cool. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration behind writing Sun Eater and its characters?
Yeah, so Sun Eater is a super personal tale, and this might take a tone for the dark, but I don't want it to seem that way, because actually me talking about it with you and talking about it in general, and even releasing Sun Eater is something that is a big relief to me, and has come after years of me trying to understand the situation, and has really kind of been fruitful for me in that respect of thinking about it. So it's actually about drug addiction and how that affects families, particularly in the case of a drug addicted parent. And it's personal because this is something I wrote for my own mother, generally, and while still trying to be kind of universal to the experience that kind of encompasses that. So the main character, even though his name is Kveldulf, and it's set in kind of 800s Norway as a saga, it's directly influenced by my own experience with my drug-addicted mother. And so it's about kind of a cautionary tale, but to kind of frame the story loosely, this drug-addicted father cuts off his leg and sacrifices it to the gods in exchange for a power that he can use to save his son from the first ever king of Norway, King Harald Fairhair, and his 5 guards. And the power turns out to be this kind of parasitic pelt that allows him to transform into what was historically written, actually, as Norway's first ever werewolf narrative. So it's kind of historically based at the same time as a fictional retelling of it. And so the whole thing is 9 issues, front to back. So it's pretty concise, and it deals with that subject matter and our protagonist. And then it kind of wraps up in a nice bow. Maybe a bloody bow. Yeah, a bloody bow.
Well, red bows are the best, right?
That's right.
They pop, you can see them the best. That's awesome, man. And it's based on Norse mythology, yeah?
Yes, to a degree. I mean, I will certainly say it's influenced by sagas and Norse mythology. The setting was something that I chose as kind of a dialogue with my own family, again, who are kind of Scandinavian American, and who, I grew up with reading the stories, the sagas and retellings, and so I wanted to create a dialogue with them. So it has a lot of Norse mythology aspects in it, but albeit most of them are pretty subtle. It's not heavy-handed. It doesn't take place in Valhalla per se, right? This is much more about the human narratives living in a world that has these kind of mysticisms about it.
That's awesome. I really love that you were able to take something like that that's important to you with the Norse aspect of it and combine it with the story that's very personal and important to you as well. That's a really cool way to blend and storytell.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's been the coalescence of 5 years of writing. So there are a lot of little details in there for me that are pretty much directly linked to my own experiences, or to experiences that I hope are universal to all who have experienced something like that. And each detail is kind of tied to something like that. It being a relatively short series, 9 issues, I think it allows you to focus on each little detail like that and kind of make each one count. I think that the intent is, to have all of these episodes linked up metaphorically, and I say episodes because I originally wrote it as that, but issues linked up metaphorically as well as in tiny details, so that if you wanted, you could go back and read them in a quick amount of time, or in a single sitting if you're on a plane, or you just like reading.
Absolutely. Now you say episodes because that's how you originally wrote it. Would you love to eventually transfer it to the screen?
I definitely think so. Either live action or animated. I kind of intended it to be written as an animated or a comic book, right? So although we're working with heavy metal and DIGA, and DIGA specializes actually in translating and adapting works. So I think that that's definitely the intention eventually. But I wrote it with the ability to adapt it. So that would be really cool to see. But right now, I'm personally just focusing on one thing at a time, just trying to get it in the best shape possible.
Absolutely. I completely understand that. I just was intrigued by the way you were talking about episodes versus issues. Now, you've been saying that you've been working on it for like 5 or 6 years. That's awesome, and such like a incredible dedication to the project. I was just wondering how that might have evolved through time, especially with your partnership with Heavy Metal, and then with your illustrator, Diego Yapur. Like, how has that influenced the story?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that the length of time was partially self-prescribed, right? Because I think in my effort to know more about the subject matter and the setting, as well as coming to learn myself how I felt about the subject matter and kind of cope and understand more fully, it took me some time to formulate in the correct way that I felt was like an honest representation of the circumstances, or at least an honest representation in my personal take, right? So it took me a while because I wanted to make sure all the aspects were in the right place. And in truth, there's always, I think, this kind of insecurity and a little bit of fear of releasing something to the world because you might not feel like it's ready yet. So all of those aspects combined a little bit into the time frame. And I think meeting up with DIGA, particularly, I met Patrick Smith, who helped facilitate all this and who was a buddy of mine from years ago. He helped me kind of lose some of that insecurity a little bit, and he read it and he was like, this is awesome. You should feel comfortable with it. And Heavy Metal has always kind of sat at the top of my collaboration for this comic. So turns out DIGA ended up knowing the team over at Heavy Metal, and they facilitated a meeting, and the rest is history. I mean, for me, it's funny because all of my influences, even in my pitch deck for Sun Eater, were Heavy Metal and anime and comics and games, right? But large majority was Heavy Metal. So I had always kind of hoped to partner up with them in this project. And maybe it was a little bit of manifestation, but now that it's coming to light, I couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. It's really cool. It's not every day that you get to the chance to partner up with the top prospect that you had and that you'd envisioned. And I'm sure that just helps solidify your confidence even more, like you were talking about, like being able to partner with them.
Totally. And yeah, totally. And, part of the reason I think they sat at the top for me was because I know where they stand with themselves too, in terms of how they view fantasy, sci-fi, and kind of the literature scene in general, and the comic book scene in general. They're at the forefront of it, and almost kind of this, guerrilla movement for it. And they're always pushing the boundaries. And I knew that in that way, they would be the ones to be able to tell the story of Sun Eater in the perfect way, right? There's very little other thought that I had to alternative companies because I knew that packed in with that would be a lot of restrictions that would change the narrative overall. And with Heavy Metal, I knew that they were going to see it for what it is, see it for its influences, understand exactly what I was going to, and allow me the freedom to tell the story in the way that I think would be most fitting. So, man, I'm just super excited. And every week I'll get back new artwork, and it's just so awesome to see the characters realized in that way after 5 years. I mean, it's insane. Diego is so talented too. So
yeah,
it's been
absolutely
great.
I've seen a few of I've seen the cover and a few pages that were sent over, and the artwork is beautiful. It's awesome. Is it exactly how you envisioned it in your head?
Totally, man. And it's funny, so far as like Diego will send new work and I have nothing to say. I have no notes. I have nothing, even things that you would expect might just be like an unknown conflict for narrative or little things or tiny details. They'd be like, oh, wait, we might have to tweak this just in case. Nothing, because Diego, I think, sees it with the way that I was hoping an artist would see it. He is very, very talented at drawing expressions, which I think, coming from the acting side, I wrote a lot of Sun Eater to be very expression-based, as well as he's got a very cinematic framing and composition. So it looks, as you turn the pages, it looks so dynamic, and it looks like you're reading through a kind of a dark, grim film. It's just so cool.
That's awesome, man. I really can't wait to check it out. Now, I saw also in the package that was sent over, it's available for pre-order right now. Sun Eater is, and you're offering that with a few different packages, correct? And one of which it includes a 4-pack of mead from your meadery with each.
Yeah.
And now that's really cool.
Yeah. Matt Medney over at Heavy Metal and I were chatting through some fun ideas like that, and we came to that one because that could be a fun reading companion, right? So I think it's perfect. I was writing it while drinking mead, so I feel like people should be reading it while drinking mead, you know?
Absolutely. Now, have you developed any new flavors or anything to coincide with Sun Eater?
Yeah, so this one is actually, it's previously unreleased. This is called a short mead. So there's 4 to a package, but it's actually like a 7% mead. This was a mead that was probably closest to what our ancient ancestors were drinking in terms of mead, because yeast products hadn't come as far, obviously, as they have now. And fermentation in terms of brewing was probably extremely difficult. So usually the beverages were lighter ABV and or even wildly fermented. Ours is a light ABV short mead that's kind of served in a beer bottle size, and it's really drinkable, man. It's probably dangerous in that respect, but I think it's kind of the perfect companion for an issue of Sun Eater, because you're reading through it. By the time you're done, you might have had 1 or 2. So it's kind of perfect.
That's awesome. And you speak about the mead with such passion as well. And I know that you have your own meadery, Allwise, in Brooklyn, correct?
Yeah, sure do.
Now what got you into wanting to brew mead?
Oh man, I've been brewing mead since I was 16. And it's not romantic by any means. I wanted to get fucked up with my friends at 16 years old. So I decided to brew it because I learned that you could buy all the ingredients legally, and I lived kind of near an apiary. So I bought the honey and I started brewing it, and it tasted like dog piss. But don't ask me how I know how that tastes. And I just kept it up, and I learned that I really loved the process of it. I wasn't really crazy about drinking it at that time because what I was making was terrible, but I learned that I loved brewing it. So I kept it up, and since 16, there really hasn't been a time in my life where I wasn't brewing something. I knew out of college I wanted to invest my money in a business that I felt really strongly about, and I love mead, and I love the education about it, and as well as kind of the dynamic of the craft brew scene. I wanted to create that. So I'm the head brewer over at our spot in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and I strongly urge anyone to try mead, whatever mead they can find, and just give it a taste, see what they think about it, because it's one of my favorite things. I have a lot of energy and a lot of interests, and I try to reach all of them as often as I can. So that's one of the kind of overlaps of both Sun Eater and this, I think.
So you're pretty involved with the creation of the mead as well.
Truthfully, I think that people assume I'm not involved in a lot of the things that I do. Yeah. I think it just kind of happens that way. But really, I took a break away from a lot of things in my life, and because I felt like I wasn't involved in those things enough to the extent that I was hoping to be. And so now everything that I do, I try to be as involved as possible without stepping on any toes. I try to be as hands-on about a project. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit of a control freak, but also at the same time, I find that it's just more fulfilling for me in that way. With mead, I brew it, and I have a taste profile that I really like, so I continue to do it. And with Sun Eater, I've written it for 5 years, pen on page, and I have a hand in pretty much the whole creation process behind the scenes too. So I love being that hands-on because I like seeing, when I read things, And when I consume things, even, I like seeing the personal touch of the person who made it.
Absolutely.
I think it's super interesting to see the kind of signature in that way. So I try to do the same thing.
That's really cool. That's awesome and very commendable. Like, I really love seeing like how involved you are and how passionate you are about these projects. It's very cool and very refreshing to see. Now, I'm sorry if I'm talking too much about the meat. I'm just very interested.
Well, I would urge you to try it too. I hope that you do.
Oh, I would love to. Now, with the process of mead, as opposed to like wine or beer or anything like that, are there any special like different like challenges that are involved with creating mead?
Yeah, I think that every alcohol has its own set of challenges. I mean, the biggest challenge for mead is definitely the honey, right? Which is what defines mead. I think the nature of honey is that it's particularly difficult for yeast to eat, and oftentimes that results in a slow fermentation period. But I think that the biggest hurdle mead has is that there's a lot of misinformation about it. I think that there's a wealth of misinformation that leads people to believe it's a super sweet dessert wine, which it really isn't and it hasn't historically been, right? Mead has always been something throughout history, up until very recently, that is more of a dry, almost white wine style of beverage, usually served flat, but it's variable in its extents too. You know, the biggest part of misinformation about mead is really that people think it tastes one certain way, which it doesn't. Like beer or like wines, you can make it in a huge variety of ways that each have its defining features. But in terms of brewing it, the biggest difficulty is just mixing the honey and getting it out of the containers and making the yeast eat it well, I guess I would say.
Okay, nice. That's super interesting, and I love that you found this different niche to like kind of capitalize on and like make it your own and put your own spin on it. That's super cool. I definitely want to.
Yeah, it's fun, man. I mean, and we're also kind of blessed with a really interested drinking community out in Williamsburg and Brooklyn in general, right? I think they're curious and I think they want to try new things, and so I think we're blessed with kind of the perfect stage to put mead up there on, because people want and are interested in trying such an old, ancient beverage. So it's pretty fun, and it's all antibacterial, it's anti-aging, and it has melatonin and serotonin in it. So if you want a restful sleep, it's probably the best one. Just don't drink it in a huge amount.
Okay. Is it available in Los Angeles? Is there a way you can get it out here?
It is available in Los Angeles and on our website. You can go through our website and check it out. But I also urge you guys, if you want to read Sun Eater and drink the mead, to actually check out the package. It's pretty fun. I know that's how I'll be doing.
Absolutely. That sounds like the best combination of the two. And talking about the combination of the two, you've also done something really cool with the release of the book that throughout the release of issues, you're going to have 5 Sun Eater gold cards. Yeah?
Yeah, so that was actually that was Matt Medney's idea over at Heavy Metal. I think he's a big Willy Wonka fan, and so he thought of this idea to slip those in, and when our bar opens up in Williamsburg, it'll kind of have this token with it that allows you to go in and get a free drink in the house when you're there every time you come, which I think is a super fun idea and will allow it would be cool for me because I'll get to talk to people who have read it face to face while I'm drinking mead with them.
Absolutely. How often are you over at the meadery?
Whenever I'm not working on other projects, I'm there. So the majority of my time I'm in New York at my meadery. Also just because I love the smell of it. I love working there. I just like being hands-on. I've growing up the way I have, working 24/7, there's this kind of weird psychological effect it has on a lot of actors and just people who love to work in general, where if you don't feel like you're doing something, you feel like you're physically deteriorating something. It's definitely a psychosis. So this is also a way for me to kind of remedy that by being hands-on in the meadery day to day and going in there and working in my downtime away from other things. It keeps me sane.
Very cool. Very cool. So As I said earlier, Sun Eater is available for pre-order now in
It
all the
is.
packages, and it hits the first issue hits shelves on August 7th, correct?
Sure does. By the way, the pre-order includes, if you know, it has a bunch of different packages, like you mentioned, but all the shipping is one-time fee. I should mention that because I remember when I released it, I had some questions about it on my Instagram post that were like, "Hey, this seems like a lot, but it's one-time fee over 9 months." So I thought I should address it straight up.
Absolutely. Okay, and that was my next question. So the issues will release every month.
Every month for 9 months, yes, you'll have an issue monthly.
Very cool. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see the story unfold. I know you probably don't want to give too much away about what's in the story and what's in the pages.
I shouldn't, but I'm a blabbermouth by nature. I will say though that at the same time as that, we're also kind of writing and doing a lot of cool accessory content for Sun Eater that's being released in Heavy Metal Mag as well. So some of the story pieces or like other things you want to learn about the world are going to be present inside there too. It's kind of overlap, which should be kind of really cool, and it's kind of gotten me back into writing some of the fringe aspects of the lore that I had in my head. I always wanted to write more of, but yeah, Sun Eater is definitely harrowing and kind of dark and influenced by a lot of the stuff that I really like to read. A lot of grim, dark narratives and truth. My first book I ever read was H.P. Lovecraft short stories, so that's kind of been driving a lot of my mannerisms since then. But I certainly hope that if whoever reads it, they would reach out to me directly and tell me what they think, because I love to hear that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I know I will. And speaking of, you were talking about the world, and do you have any plans to revisit the world of Sun Eater after these 9 issues?
I mean, I'm certainly realizing now that there's a lot more to say. And I've had some ideas, but I will also echo something that has always kind of been present in my mind, which is that a good story knows when to end. I think that as far as the story regarding this particular narrative goes, this narrative ends at 9. And I think it's enough time to tell what I was hoping to tell. Although the world of Sun Eater could potentially go beyond that. So I'm already thinking about it, and as well as a couple other things too. So whatever I do is going to take a long time, though. Just by nature, I like to sit on ideas for a long time. So when I finally get to the point of being comfortable with it, I hope it'll be with heavy metal again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hear you there. It's definitely, when in the creative process, it feels better to go over everything with a fine-tooth comb, make sure you're proud of it, like you said earlier, before you release it and deal with the confidence and all of that. So aside from Sun Eater, what's next for you? Like, as the issues start to come out and the 9 issues come out, are you thinking more comics, more acting gigs, directing gigs? What's next?
Well, I certainly know my limits in terms of directing. I don't think I'd ever want to do that. And that's because I have an immense respect for directors, and I just know that I'm not nearly organized enough. However, I'm focusing on Sun Eater right now for sure. And that will be a process that continues on for a while, right, as we get the issues into shape. As well as, though, I'd like to get back into doing some more films that are being set up now. So I'm going to be working once the COVID restrictions are lifted and everyone feels safe again. I think obviously everyone's kind of reeling from that, trying to figure out how we're going to navigate that new landscape. And then I have a few films being released too. And aside all of that, I'm making a lot of booze at my meadery in New York. So the one thing I know for sure is that I'm just going to try and stay true to myself, doing projects that I find interesting and fun and fulfilling.
Absolutely. And that's all you can do, is be true to yourself, and the rest will fall into place, right?
That's exactly right. People can smell that passion from a mile away, I think. If you ever do something you're not passionate about, it reeks like an odor.
Oh, absolutely. You can definitely tell. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, man. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we head out?
I guess the last thing I would say is, to whoever reads it, thank you so much for the support. I mean, it really means a lot to me. It's a super personal thing, and I hope that if you read it and you relate to it at all, that it helps you like it helped me. So that's it.
Absolutely. And like you said earlier, anybody that is out there and reading it, definitely hit Dylan up and let him know your thoughts and what you thought of the series. He's really open to that. Well, and be sure to pre-order Sun Eater now or check it out when it comes out on shelves on August 7th. So
thanks so much,
guys.